You're about to witness the 24-hour avalanche that ripped a broke single father from the edge of eviction and catapulted him into a boardroom he never dreamed of, because the one interview he missed was the moment a dying stranger whispered a name that cracked open a decade-old corporate murder and a buried fortune meant for his daughter. Stay to the end, because the final revelation will make you believe the universe keeps its own accounting. And if you want more stories that prove miracles, wear ordinary clothes and speak in subway delays and wrong turns, smash subscribe right now. In the bruised dawn of February 17th, when the city's frost still clung like guilt to the windows of the 612 southbound Ian Calder, 34, hollow-eyed, sole parent to a 7-year-old who believed peanut butter was a food group, was already rehearsing the apology he would deliver to the hiring manager at Halbert Vale. "I'm sorry, sir. The trains were late. My sitter bailed. My little girl has pneumonia. Please, just 5 minutes. I need this salary like oxygen. I'll mop floors. Just let me in." Yet as the doors hissed open at Lexington, a woman collapsed across from him. Gray suit soaked with rain, lips the color of skim milk, clutching her chest and whispering a single word: Aurelia. And Ian, whose life had been a series of precisely counted risks since his wife died birthing Lila, felt the pendulum of destiny slam sideways. He leapt, pressed 2 fingers to the woman's carotid, felt the stuttering rhythm of a heart that still had secrets to spill, and in the 17 minutes before paramedics arrived, he knelt on dirty linoleum, counting compressions. 30, 2 breaths, 30, while commuters film with phones, and every beat felt like coins dropping from his own future, because at 8:47 he was supposed to be on the 42nd floor, pitching himself as the forensic accountant who could smell embezzlement in a comma splice. Yet here he was on the floor of car 7347B, tasting someone else's blood, and when the EMTs finally lifted her, the woman gripped Ian's wrist with the strength of the dying and pressed a silver fountain pen into his palm, whispering, "Find Aurelia. She's the key. Trust the elevator." Before the doors swallowed her, Ian stood drenched in sweat and someone else's perfume, the train lurching onward, and he knew the interview was gone. Halbert Vale did not reschedule. But the pen was warm, its barrel engraved with the initials VRS, and when he uncapped it later in the hospital waiting room, a slip of paper, no larger than a fortune cookie prophecy, slid out. The 19th of April, 2009, Sub-Basement C, Elevator 4, code 86241. He pocketed it, called his neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, to sit with feverish Lila, and by dusk he was descending into the granite bowels of the Valentina R. Sable building, the very tower he'd been heading to for the interview, because the dying woman's ID badge had read Valentina Sable, Chief Executive Officer, Sable Holdings, and everything in Ian's world had just inverted like a flipped hourglass. Sub-Basement C was a tomb of rusted pipes and abandoned file cabinets, yet Elevator 4 stood pristine, its brass doors reflecting Ian's haunted eyes, and when he keyed 86241, the car lurched downward, past floors that didn't exist on the directory until it opened into a cavernous archive lit by a single bulb, where a girl of about 7, freckles, mismatched socks, eyes the color of storm cloud, stood guard over a steel box labeled Aurelia. "You're late," she said, as though they'd scheduled this apocalypse years ago, and Ian, whose nerves were already frayed, felt the floor tilt. The girl introduced herself as Aurelia Sable, Valentina's daughter, presumed dead in a boating accident 10 years ago, now living off vending machine dinners and old accounting ledgers, because her mother had hidden her here from enemies who still believed she'd drowned. The box contained a hard drive encrypted with evidence that Halbert Vale, the firm Ian had begged for a job, had laundered $87 million through shell companies, implicating the board, the CFO, and the man who was to interview Ian that morning. Valentina, terminally ill, had planned to expose them at the annual shareholders meeting, but her heart had accelerated the timetable, and she needed someone honest, desperate, and invisible to carry the drive out. Ian's fingerprints were already on the pen, the paper, the elevator buttons. He was implicated now whether he ran or not. As he stared at Aurelia, whose only crime was being born into a war she didn't choose, Ian felt the same surge that had kept him compressing a stranger's heart on a train. The refusal to let another child lose a parent to corporate vultures. He slid the drive into his daughter's empty asthma inhaler case, the only container he had, and together they rode the elevator up, stepping into a lobby now swarming with Halbert Vale security because the CFO had already been tipped that Valentina was en route to the hospital and might have passed evidence. Ian, clutching Aurelia's hand, ducked into a janitor's closet while guards swept the mezzanine, and in the dark he felt Lila's inhaler case burning like a coal against his ribs. He texted, "Mrs. Alvarez. On way? Fever worse?" But the reply chilled him. "2 men here asking about you. Said you left your portfolio. I didn't let them in. Lila asleep." Ian's pulse drummed Morse code for run. He and Aurelia slipped out via a service stairwell into the alley, where February rain now fell like nails. And as they ran toward the subway, a black sedan screeched alongside, window lowering to reveal the hiring manager himself, Mr. Halbert, smiling the way sharks smile at bleeding ankles. "Mr. Calder, we really must discuss your qualifications." And Ian felt the world narrowing to a pinhole. But Aurelia, small and fierce, pulled a fire alarm on the building's exterior, sirens exploding, chaos erupting, and in the stampede they vanished into the streaming crowd. By midnight they were in Ian's cramped apartment, Lila fever-flushed on the couch, Mrs. Alvarez wielding a frying pan like a sword, while Ian downloaded the drive onto an ancient laptop. Spreadsheets bloomed across the screen like toxic flowers, offshore accounts, ghost invoices, a money trail that ended in a numbered account labeled LC, Lila Calder, opened 2 weeks after Ian's wife died, seeded with $50 million Valentina had siphoned as hush money when she realized the firm's crimes had indirectly caused the hospital understaffing that killed Monica Calder during childbirth. Ian's legs buckled. The fortune he'd prayed for every night had existed all along, but it was blood money, and Aurelia, reading his face, whispered, "My mom said you'd know what to do with it." And in that moment, Ian understood Valentina hadn't missed her meeting to die. She had kept it, in the only form that mattered. At dawn, he walked into FBI headquarters with Aurelia and Lila beside him, inhaler case in hand. And by sunset, Halbert Vale's offices were sealed, the board arrested, the $50 million unfrozen, and transferred into a trust for Lila and Aurelia jointly, administered by Ian, who was offered, but declined, the CFO position at a restructured Ethical Sable Holdings, now majority-owned by its employees. Instead, he took a modest salary as guardian of girls' futures, teaching them to read balance sheets the way other fathers taught bike riding. And on the first day of spring, Valentina, recovering from emergency surgery, paid for by her own reclaimed funds, sat in a wheelchair on Ian's fire escape, watching the girls blow soap bubbles that caught the sun like tiny crystal planets. And she whispered to Ian, "You missed one interview and kept 1,000 others alive," just as Lila called out, "Daddy, look, the bubbles spell Mom." And for the first time since Monica's last heartbeat, Ian let himself cry. Not for what he'd lost, but for the impossible architecture of grace that had built a bridge from a subway floor to a rooftop garden where 2 orphans and a widower learned that sometimes the universe doesn't give second chances. It gives better ones. And every year on February 17th, the girls release one silver balloon into the sky with the note, for the stranger who chose us. Because they know miracles don't arrive with fanfare. They arrive when a single dad decides a dying woman's heartbeat is louder than his own fear. And if you want more proof that destiny keeps its own ledger, subscribe now, because next week I'll tell you how that same elevator code opened a vault in Prague and revealed the name of the accountant who faked his death to save a village. Don't miss it.